What if a simple visit to meet your fiancée's parents turned into something you never saw coming? Ethan thought the weekend would be easy. Just a short drive from Chicago to Maplewood, a quiet town with tree-lined streets and old brick houses. He and Claire had been engaged for 3 months, and this visit felt important. He wanted her parents to trust him. He wanted to prove he was ready for marriage. As they pulled into the driveway of her childhood home, Ethan took a deep breath. Claire squeezed his hand and smiled. "Relax," she whispered. "They're going to love you." He hoped she was right. The front door opened before they even knocked. Robert, Claire's father, stood there with a big grin and a firm handshake. He was tall, serious-looking, but friendly. "Welcome, son," he said. Ethan felt a small wave of relief. Then Linda appeared behind him. Claire's mother looked elegant in a simple blue sweater, her hair styled perfectly, her eyes bright and observant. She stepped forward and hugged Claire tightly. When she turned to Ethan, her smile softened. "So you're the man who stole my daughter's heart," she said warmly. Her voice was calm, almost musical. She hugged him too, and though it was polite, Ethan felt a strange pause before she stepped back. It was subtle, but he noticed it. Inside the house, everything felt cozy and organized. Family photos lined the hallway. The smell of roasted chicken filled the air. Linda had prepared a full dinner. She insisted Ethan sit at the head of the table beside Claire. "Guests of honor," she joked. During dinner, Robert asked practical questions about Ethan's job and marketing. Claire shared wedding ideas. But Linda asked different questions. She leaned in, studying him carefully. "What was your childhood like?" she asked. "Were you close to your parents?" Ethan answered honestly. He spoke about growing up in a small apartment, about working hard for scholarships, about wanting stability. Linda listened closely, almost too closely. Her eyes stayed on him longer than necessary. When he laughed, she smiled in a way that felt personal. Claire didn't seem to notice. After dinner, Robert suggested watching a game in the living room. Claire went upstairs to unpack. Ethan offered to help Linda clear the table. "That's very thoughtful," she said. In the kitchen, they worked side by side. Their hands brushed once while reaching for the same plate. She didn't pull away quickly. Instead, she looked at him for a moment. "You care about her," she said quietly. "More than anything," Ethan replied. She nodded slowly. "Good." The word carried weight. Later that evening, Claire came down wearing comfortable pajamas and joined her father on the couch. Ethan stepped outside to take a call from work. When he came back in, the house was quiet. Robert had fallen asleep in his chair. Claire had gone upstairs early. Linda stood alone near the fireplace. "Long day?" she asked. Ethan nodded. "A little." She poured him a glass of water without asking. "Marriage is not easy," she said gently. "It changes people." He wasn't sure how to respond. "Claire is strong," he said. "We'll figure things out together." Linda smiled, but her expression held something deeper. "I hope so." For a moment, they stood in silence. The ticking clock on the wall sounded louder than it should have. Ethan suddenly felt aware of how close they were standing. He stepped back slightly. "I should get some rest," he said. "Of course," she replied, her voice calm. Upstairs, Ethan lay awake longer than expected. He replayed small moments in his mind. The way she looked at him. The tone of her questions. The quiet intensity in the kitchen. He told himself he was imagining things. She was just being kind. Protective of her daughter. That had to be it. The next morning started early. Claire left to meet an old friend for coffee. Robert drove into town for errands. Ethan stayed behind, planning to check emails before breakfast. He sat at the dining table with his laptop open when Linda walked in. She wore a simple white blouse and jeans, casual but elegant. "Good morning," she said softly. She placed a cup of coffee beside him. Black, right? He blinked in surprise. Yes. Thank you. She remembered. Claire talks about you a lot, Linda added. She says you make her feel safe. Ethan smiled. I try. Linda pulled out a chair and sat across from him. Sunlight streamed through the window, lighting up the room. Do you ever feel afraid, she asked suddenly? Of losing something good? The question caught him off guard. Sometimes, he admitted. She studied his face again, her gaze thoughtful. Life has a way of testing people, she said. Especially when they least expect it. He wasn't sure what she meant. The air between them felt heavier than before. Not inappropriate. Not obvious. Just charged with something unspoken. He cleared his throat. I really love Claire, he said again, almost as reassurance to himself. Linda's lips curved into a faint smile. I can see that. But there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. When Claire returned an hour later, the tension faded. The house felt normal again. They spent the afternoon looking through old photo albums. Claire laughed at her childhood hairstyles. Robert told embarrassing stories. Linda stayed mostly quiet, but every now and then Ethan caught her watching him with a thoughtful expression. That evening, as Ethan stepped outside to grab his bag from the car, his phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number appeared on the screen. Sometimes first impressions can be unforgettable. His heart skipped. He looked toward the house. Through the living room window, he saw Linda standing near the curtains. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't waving. She was simply watching. Ethan slipped the phone back into his pocket, trying to calm his racing thoughts. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe it meant nothing. But deep down, he knew something had shifted during this visit. And the weekend was far from over. What if the message wasn't a mistake at all? Ethan barely slept that night. The words on his phone kept flashing in his mind. Sometimes first impressions can be unforgettable. He tried to convince himself it could be spam. A wrong number. Anything else. But deep down, he knew it wasn't random. The next morning felt strangely normal. Claire woke up cheerful and full of plans. She wanted to visit the lake nearby, take pictures, make memories before heading back to Chicago. Robert agreed to join her for a walk along the trail. Ethan said he would stay behind to finish some work calls. Linda offered to stay home too. Someone has to start lunch, she said casually. As soon as the front door closed and the house became quiet, Ethan felt the air change again. He sat at the kitchen table, pretending to focus on his laptop. Linda moved around the kitchen slowly, washing vegetables, setting out plates. Every movement felt calm and measured. Did you sleep well? She asked without looking at him. Not really, he admitted before he could stop himself. She turned then, her expression soft. New places can do that. He hesitated. Did you send me a message last night? The question hung between them. Linda didn't look surprised. She dried her hands with a towel and walked closer. I did, she said quietly. Ethan's chest tightened. Why? She studied him for a moment. Because I meant it. He stood up, creating distance. That's not appropriate, he said, keeping his voice steady. Linda didn't argue. She didn't apologize either. I'm not trying to cause trouble, she replied. I just wanted you to know that I see you. Her words confused him. You see me? He repeated. You're kind, she said. Driven. You care about Claire. That matters. Ethan shook his head. You could have just said that. A faint smile touched her lips. Some things are easier to write. The tension grew. Thicker. He grabbed his phone from the table. I love your daughter, he said firmly. And I respect this family. Linda nodded slowly. I know you do. For a second, her eyes looked almost sad again. But love can be complicated. Before he could respond, the sound of the front door opening broke the moment. Claire and Robert returned, laughing about something that happened on the trail. The house filled with noise again. Linda stepped back into her role easily, smiling, serving lemonade, acting as if nothing had happened. Ethan forced himself to act normal too. He didn't want Claire to notice anything strange. But as they sat down for lunch, he felt Linda's gaze on him again. Not bold. Not obvious. Just there. That afternoon, Claire suggested driving into town for ice cream. Robert stayed behind to watch a game. Linda said she needed to finish cleaning up. Ethan hesitated before agreeing to go. During the drive, Claire talked about wedding details. Venues. Guest lists. Music. Ethan tried to focus on her voice, on the future they were planning. He loved her. He really did. But the message still lingered in his mind like a shadow. When they returned, the house felt unusually quiet. Robert had fallen asleep again. Linda was in the backyard, sitting alone on the patio. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow across the grass. Claire went upstairs to take a shower. Ethan stepped outside, unsure why. Maybe to clear his head. Linda looked up when she heard him. "Beautiful evening," she said softly. He nodded but stayed standing. "We shouldn't keep having private conversations," he said carefully. She sighed, not defensive, just reflective. "You think I'm trying to cross a line? Aren't you?" he asked. She looked away toward the trees. "When you get older," she began, "you start seeing things differently. You notice kindness more. You notice strength." He didn't answer. "I was young when I married Claire's father," she continued. "I had dreams too." There was no bitterness in her voice, just honesty. Ethan felt a strange mix of sympathy and discomfort. "I'm not your dream," he said quietly. She turned back to him, her eyes steady. "No," she replied. "You're hers." For a moment, everything felt calm again. Then she added, "But that doesn't stop feelings from being real." His heartbeat quickened. "Feelings can be controlled," he said. Linda stood up slowly. They were closer now, only a few steps apart. "Can they?" she asked. Before he could respond, the back door opened. Claire stepped outside, her hair still damp. She smiled when she saw them together. "What are you two talking about?" she asked playfully. "Just the sunset," Linda answered smoothly. Claire wrapped her arms around Ethan's waist. "It's pretty, right?" she said. He nodded, forcing a smile. That night, as they packed their bags to leave the next morning, Ethan checked his phone again. Another message waited. "Some choices define who we really are." His stomach dropped. He looked toward the hallway. Linda's bedroom door was slightly open, light spilling out. He typed a reply before he could overthink it. "Please stop." A few seconds later, his phone buzzed again. "I will. If you're sure." He stared at the words. Was he sure? Of course he was. He loved Claire. He wanted their future. But something about the way Linda had spoken, the way she had looked at him, had stirred something unexpected. Not desire. Not exactly. But awareness. The awareness that boundaries could blur if he wasn't careful. The next morning, as they loaded the car, Linda hugged Claire tightly. Then she turned to Ethan. Her embrace was brief, polite. "Take care of her," she whispered. "Always," he replied. As he walked toward the driver's seat, his phone vibrated one last time. He didn't check it right away. He didn't want to. But once they were on the highway and Claire was scrolling through her photos, he glanced at the screen. "This isn't over." The message read. His grip tightened on the steering wheel. He slowly looked at Claire, who was smiling at something on her phone, completely unaware. Ethan swallowed hard. He had tried to end it. He had set a boundary. But something told him that this was only the beginning. Asterisk, what if silence only made things louder? Asterisk, Ethan thought distance would solve everything. 2 weeks had passed since the trip to Michigan. Life in Chicago moved fast again. Work deadlines. Wedding plans. Apartment hunting. On the outside, everything looked perfect. But inside, tension grew quietly. Linda had not sent another message after that final one. Not a single word. And somehow, that worried him more. One evening, Claire came home looking stressed. She dropped her purse on the kitchen counter and sighed. "Mom and Dad are fighting again," she said. Ethan felt a chill. "About what?" Claire shook her head. "The same things. Dad working too much. Mom feeling ignored." She paused. "Mom says she might come stay with us for a few days." The words hit him harder than he expected. "Here?" he asked carefully. "Just for a little while," Claire replied. "She needs space." Ethan forced a small nod. "Of course." 2 days later, Linda arrived with a suitcase and a calm smile. She hugged Claire tightly at the door. When she looked at Ethan, her expression was polite. Controlled. No hidden message in her eyes. That almost made it worse. The first evening felt normal. They ordered pizza. Watched a movie. Talked about wedding invitations. Linda acted like a supportive mother. Helpful. Warm. Ethan began to think maybe he had imagined the tension before. Maybe he had misunderstood everything. But late that night, when Claire had fallen asleep, Ethan walked into the kitchen for water. The lights were off except for the small lamp near the stove. Linda was sitting at the table alone. "Can't sleep?" she asked softly. "Just thirsty," he replied. There was a pause. "You look tired," she added. He stayed near the counter. "Work." She studied him quietly. "I meant emotionally." He didn't answer. She stood up slowly. "Relax. I'm not here to cause problems." "Then why are you here?" he asked before thinking. Her eyes flickered. "Because my marriage is falling apart," she said honestly. That caught him off guard. She continued, "When you've been with someone for decades, you start to feel invisible." Her voice did not break. It stayed steady. "I won't be that person forever." Ethan felt sympathy again. Dangerous sympathy. "You should talk to him," he said. She gave a small laugh. "We've talked for years." She stepped closer, but not too close. "You don't understand what it's like to feel unwanted." He met her gaze. Claire would be hurt if she knew these conversations were happening. That made her freeze. A crack appeared in her calm mask. "I would never hurt my daughter," she said firmly. "Then we need clear boundaries," he replied. She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded once. "You're right." The next few days were smoother. Linda kept her distance. She spent time exploring the city during the day. Claire seemed happy to have her mother around. One afternoon, Ethan came home early from work. The apartment was quiet. He heard soft music playing from the living room. Linda was standing near the window, looking out at the skyline. "Claire's at the bakery tasting cakes," she said without turning around. Ethan placed his keys down slowly. "Okay." Silence stretched between them. Then she spoke again. "I booked a return ticket." He blinked. "You did?" She finally turned to face him. "Tomorrow morning." Something unexpected tightened in his chest. Relief. And something else he didn't want to name. "That's probably best," he said. She nodded. "For everyone." She walked closer, holding out a small envelope. "This is for you." He hesitated before taking it. "What is it?" "Open it later," she replied. Her voice was calm again. No hidden emotion. Just clarity. Claire returned an hour later, excited about cake flavors. Linda told her about the flight. Claire looked disappointed but understood. That evening, they all had dinner together at a small Italian restaurant nearby. The mood was lighter. Almost peaceful. After Claire went to bed, Ethan finally opened the envelope in the kitchen. Inside was a short handwritten note. "You reminded me that I still have a heart capable of feeling. That's my responsibility, not yours. Choose wisely. Linda." No flirtation. No pressure. Just honesty. He exhaled slowly. The next morning, at the airport, Claire hugged her mother tightly. Tears filled her eyes. Linda held her close, whispering something Ethan couldn't hear. When it was his turn to say goodbye, Linda's hug was brief and respectful. "Take care of her," she said again. "I will," he answered. She stepped back, looking at both of them together. For a second, Ethan saw something in her eyes. Not longing. Not regret. Acceptance. She turned and walked toward security without looking back. In the car ride home, Claire rested her head on Ethan's shoulder. "I'm glad you and Mom get along," she said softly. His heart skipped. "Why?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "Because she said she trusts you." He tightened his grip on the steering wheel. Trust. That word carried weight now. That evening, as they sat on the couch planning final wedding details, Ethan felt something shift inside him. The tension was fading. The confusion was clearing. Linda had stepped back. She had made her choice. Now it was his turn to protect what mattered. But just as he leaned in to kiss Claire, his phone buzzed on the coffee table. He glanced at the screen. It wasn't Linda. It was Robert. The message was short. "We need to talk about what's really been going on." Ethan's pulse jumped. He looked at Claire, who hadn't noticed the message. The past he thought was closing suddenly felt wide open again. What if the truth was bigger than the mistake? Ethan did not sleep that night. Robert's message stayed on his screen like a warning light. Claire was beside him, breathing softly, unaware of the storm building again. By morning, Ethan knew he couldn't ignore it. Secrets had already created enough damage in other lives. He would not let silence create more. He stepped onto the balcony and called Robert. The older man answered quickly. His voice was calm but heavy. "I didn't want to send that text," Robert said. Ethan swallowed. "Then why did you?" There was a pause. "Because my marriage is ending. And I need to know if it's because of me, or because of something else." Ethan leaned against the railing. The cold air helped him think. "Linda never crossed a line," he said carefully. "Not physically. Not emotionally in a way that broke trust." Robert let out a slow breath. "But..." Ethan closed his eyes. "She feels invisible. She told me that much." Silence filled the call. Robert spoke again, softer this time. "I know." That answer surprised Ethan. "You know?" Robert's voice cracked slightly. "I've been busy building a business for 30 years. I thought providing was enough. I didn't see her fading." Ethan felt something shift. This wasn't about jealousy. It was about regret. "She came to stay with us because she needed space," Ethan said. "She booked a flight back. She chose to leave before anything went wrong." Robert was quiet for a long moment. "Thank you for being honest," he finally said. "I needed to hear that." Ethan hesitated. "What are you going to do?" Robert sighed. "I'm going to try. For the first time in years, I'm going to try." When the call ended, Ethan felt lighter. The weight of suspicion was gone. But there was still something he had to do. He walked back inside. Claire was awake now, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee. She looked up. "Who were you talking to?" He didn't hesitate. "Your dad." Her eyebrows lifted. Is everything okay? He sat across from her. His hands rested on the table. We need to talk about something. Her face grew serious. He told her everything. Not in dramatic detail. Not to shock her. Just the truth. How her mother had felt lost. How there had been emotional tension. How he had drawn boundaries. How she had respected them. Claire listened without interrupting. Her eyes filled slowly, but not with anger. With sadness. I knew something was wrong between them, she whispered. Mom has been distant for years. Ethan reached for her hand. Nothing happened that would hurt you. I promise. She searched his face, looking for doubt. She found none. After a long moment, she nodded. Thank you for telling me. That evening, Claire called her mother. Ethan gave her privacy. He waited in the living room, heart pounding. When Claire returned, her expression was softer. Mom admitted she was confused, she said. But she said you were honorable. Ethan exhaled deeply. Days passed. Then a week. Then 2. Life slowly returned to normal rhythm. Work. Wedding plans. Simple dinners. Then one Sunday afternoon, Claire received a photo message. She smiled when she saw it. Look, she said, handing Ethan her phone. It was a picture of Linda and Robert sitting at a small outdoor cafe in Michigan. They were holding hands. Not perfectly. Not like a young couple. But gently. Carefully. The message under the photo read, trying again. Ethan felt warmth spread through him. Later that night, as he and Claire lay in bed, she traced circles on his arm. Do you ever wonder how close we came to losing everything? She asked softly. He thought about the quiet kitchen. The envelope. The late-night conversations. The tension that could have turned into something irreversible. Yes, he admitted. But we didn't. Claire rested her head on his chest. Love isn't just about feelings, she said. It's about choices. He held her tighter. She was right. Weeks later, at the wedding rehearsal dinner, Linda and Robert arrived together. They looked different. Not younger. Not transformed. Just more present. Linda hugged Claire with real joy. When she greeted Ethan, her smile was warm but steady. No hidden messages. No tension. Just gratitude. You protected what mattered, she whispered quietly so only he could hear. So did you, he replied. The wedding day came bright and clear. Chicago's skyline shimmered in the background as Claire walked down the aisle. Ethan watched her with certainty in his heart. This was where he belonged. During the reception, laughter filled the room. Music played. Families blended. At one point, Ethan stepped outside for fresh air. Robert joined him. You know, Robert said, looking at the city lights, sometimes almost losing something is the only way to see it clearly. Ethan nodded. I think we all learned that. Inside, Claire was dancing with her mother. They were laughing freely. No tension. No shadows. Just love. Ethan realized something important then. The real danger had not been attraction. It had been silence. It had been loneliness left unspoken. But honesty had changed the direction of everything. As the night ended and Claire ran into his arms under a shower of sparklers, Ethan felt peace. The storm that once threatened them had cleared the sky instead. And for the first time since that unexpected visit months ago, there were no secrets left between them. Only trust.